Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Living Manna. Hi, guys. I'm Dave Sain, Senior Shepherd here at LMC. It's Wednesday night, which, of course, for us means it's Bible study time. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Once you log in tonight, give us a shout out, give us a hello from wherever you happen to be watching from. We would appreciate that. Got a neat study for you guys tonight, lots of information. So I want to jump into this quick. First, just the usual commercials that we do. If this is the first time you're hanging out with us, A, we appreciate that. B, if you do enjoy the message, like and share this out with somebody that you think would benefit from it. If you give us a thumbs up, that certainly helps. Everybody that's watching, if you give us a thumbs up, that certainly helps with the algorithm to get this out to more people. If you're not subscribed, you can hit the bell so that you're notified each time that we do go live, whether it's Wednesday nights or it's Shabbat, and keep up with all the different studies and services that we're doing. Certainly, you can download the LMC app. It's free on Google Play Store or the App Store, and be part of LMC, be part of the family here. We would certainly love to have you. And if you happen to be anywhere in the boroughs or the tri-state area, come on down and visit with us. We would love to have you on a Shabbat to fellowship with us. All right, so all that out of the way, we got some neat stuff to go over for today. We've been in the gospel according to Matthew. We're going to continue that study today. Today is the notes, by the way, should be downloaded. You guys can get them either in the description box or you can get them on the app. If you're watching us on the app, you can download them so you can have them. But of course, they're going to be up on the screen as you guys are watching tonight as well. Tonight is study number 5 in the Gospel of Matthew, our Hebrew root. The title for tonight is Out of Egypt. Out of Egypt. We're going to get into chapter 2. We're going to hopefully finish all of chapter 2, verses 12 to 23, which is right at the end of the chapter. Hopefully we'll get all the way through it. The next chapter we're going to get into is going to be about John the Baptist, and that's going to be a big one. We're spending a little time on that because that's a big story, but that's next week. So here we are today in Out of Egypt, chapter 2. Let me make this screen just a little bit bigger for you guys. If you're watching us on a TV screen, this way it's nice and big for your phone, so you can make it nice and big. But there it is, Matthew, Hebrew root study number 5, Out of Egypt. All right, so I've been drilling this into you guys ever since we started, right from the introduction. I'm going to keep doing this so that this becomes familiar to us, some of these terms. When we read in the Gospel of Matthew, and even the other Gospels, when we read in the Gospel of Matthew in particular, though, the phrase son of David, it has a couple of different meanings, and you got to sort of be sensitive and, to make your decision as to which meaning is being implied here. But certainly it refers to the lineage of King David, meaning that someone is of the actual family tree of King David, and therefore an heir, a rightful heir to the throne. But the term son of David, and I put there / son of God, because sometimes they're used interchangeably, yes, can mean the lineage of King David, but it can also mean, and often does mean, and this is one of the things I think that we miss sort of in modern Christendom. We don't realize that this term means this, that the son of David or the son of God is a reference to Solomon. King Solomon, the son that inherits the throne after David. He is the first king called the Son of God. But more than that, in the first century thinking, they thought of Solomon as, yes, Solomon the king, but as the wise or the wisest Torah teacher ever. Obviously, Messiah takes that crown, but he is the wisest Torah teacher ever. They also revered him as a healer and as an exorcist, and obviously as the builder of the temple. Now, again, we went into in some of the other studies as to why that is and what books those things come from. The bottom line is this was the thinking in the first century. So when you said son of God, you might be referring to Solomon when you said that. Or if you said son of David, you might be referring to Solomon. And as we get through more of the study, you're going to see that will come up, and this will play a big part by the time we get to the end of the book. But I don't want to spoil that for you. But the Son of God also has another meaning in the book, as is defined for us right in the beginning. And it sort of builds as the book goes on. And then, of course, at the end, we understand this, that Son of God also has the meaning of the literal divine son of Elohim. The son of Adam also has a couple of different definitions. Number one, it means human being, a man. Messiah often speaks of himself as the Son of Man. It's kind of funny because he does it in the third person, which is a little weird, but okay, he does it in the third person, referring to himself as the Son of Man, human. But there's times he also uses that term Son of Adam, and he's not just talking about human, he's talking about divine, like the Son of God, the divine Son of Elohim, Son of Adam, or Son of Man, also has that connotation. And of course, I'm going to get more into this for tonight. Messiah, from their first century perspective, meant the anointed military deliverer and future king of Israel. Now, Messiah means that to us as well, but obviously it means more than that to us. It means the Redeemer, the one who paid for our salvation, right? The Lamb of Elohim. So it means that to us as well, but you have to understand, in the first century, as we're reading this text, that's what it means to them. You're going to see that really sort of highlighted tonight, how much that is in their thinking and how much that colors the entire story as we go through it. So just some Hebraic comparisons and some verbiage I want everybody to be familiar with. We're going to keep going over this over and over and over and over till this becomes second nature and you can recognize it as we read through the text. But for tonight, I want to talk to you a little bit because we're going to get into chapter 2. Now, we've already seen this in chapter 1 as Matthew, the writer of the gospel, whoever he is, whether he's the actual Matthew that's a disciple or some other Matthew, is a very, very knowledgeable Jewish person who understands the Torah, understands the Pharisees, understands the Sadducees, understands the scripture. And what he does is throughout the book, he gives us commentary. He'll throw in a little bit of explanation that certainly someone from a Jewish perspective would absolutely cling to and realize. Remember, the entire thought of the message is that Messiah is the king, the son of David, of the lineage of David. But in chapter 2, the end of chapter 2 especially, and from here on out, we're going to notice that the commentary that Matthew gives is he's going to use both the Torah and the prophets. And if you're joining me on the notes here, I'm right here in the front. And Matthew's going to give us some commentary using both the Torah and the prophets. And what he's going to do is he's going to identify specific prophetic scriptures or stories that he uses in a way to highlight and verify the authenticity of Messiah Yeshua. This is important, right? Because he's writing to Jewish people, and he's going to use scripture to validate the fact that he is the Messiah. And this is why he's the Messiah. This happened, and this was written. It's sort of the calling card, right? It's the business card of Messiah. It's his ID. It's his identification. The scripture says this, Yeshua Messiah did this, but he's going to do it. And the verses he's going to bring up and the explanation or the authenticity of Messiah's character and person, he's not going to do it in the way that most Jews would expect it in the first century. Because remember, the overriding thought, though obviously they knew he'd be born in Bethlehem, we already saw that in chapter 1, that that's where the Mashiach comes from. But their overriding thought of Messiah is that he is a military leader who will become king after he rids Israel of their enemies. That was the overriding concept and idea of Messiah. It still is today amongst our Jewish brethren. Obviously, we have a deeper understanding than that. He is also Redeemer. He's also Savior, all of those things as well. But we're going to get that as the story goes on. But what they are expecting is a military leader. But Messiah, not just here in Matthew, but in other parts of the gospel, and we're just going to look at just one from another book. This is from the Gospel of John, chapter 5 and verse 41. Where Messiah makes this statement that lets us know this is exactly how we're supposed to understand him. We're supposed to read the Torah and the prophets and understand the stories of the Torah and the prophets as his identifying mark and verification of who he is. So here in John chapter 5, verse 41, very familiar verse to all of us, I know, but here's what the master says in speaking specifically to the Pharisees. He says, I do not receive glory from men, but I know you, that you do not have the love of Elohim in you. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you would receive, another Messiah. And they do. We'll see that in a second. He says, how are you able to believe when you are receiving glory from one another? And the glory that is from the only Elohim you do not seek. Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, Moses, Moshe, in whom you have set your expectation. You say that you believe in. For if you believed Moses, you would have believed me, since he wrote about me. And that's it right there. Messiah is making it very clear. And it's not just Moses, it's going to be the prophets as well. Both are going to, but in this particular case, he's referring to the Torah, to Moses. He's saying Moses wrote about him. But if you do not believe his writings, how shall you believe my words? And so here Messiah is in the Gospel of John authenticating this concept or this idea that should sort of lead and guide us in our study when we read the Torah, when we read the prophets. Now, when we read them, we should be looking for a Messiah in them. A verification of the story of Messiah is in those words. Later on, in another couple of chapters, the master is going to say the same thing in the Gospel of Matthew a couple of times, but this is one of the most prolific points in which he says this. This is Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, when the master says, do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. And of course, we will go over what people take that to mean, but he's telling us, I've come to fulfill them. I've come to fill them up, to give them meaning. This is exactly what he's telling us in the Gospel of John. If you believe Moses, he wrote about me. I haven't come to destroy the Torah, the prophets. I've come to fulfill what was written about me. And just because he fulfills it doesn't mean the Torah has no bearing on us any longer. It's his calling card. It's his identification. It's the authenticity, the verification of who he is. He will live out the stories of the Torah in some way. The catch for us is to learn it and to understand it. And so here, both in the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of John, this point is made very, very clear by both Gospel writers. And this makes the Messiah, Yeshua, different than any other Messiah there has ever been. The Torah and the prophets literally are an authentication system. It's the way of Elohim, a God outside of our time-space continuum, intervening and communicating with us through other men, through holy men, writing down things under the inspiration of the Spirit that are true and accurate to the history and the culture and the things that are happening live for them. But because this information is coming from outside of our time, it also has the ability to bridge time and becomes the description and the characteristics, the authenticity, the verification, the ID of the one who is coming in the future. So this is a really, really important point. Only Yeshua has this verification system. No other Messiah, and there's been plenty of other Messiahs. This is really important down here on the bottom. No other Messiah could claim, not only could they not claim such a thing, they never tried to claim such a thing. No other Messiah that has ever come, be it before Yeshua Messiah or after, because there's people that come after Messiah that claim to be the Messiah. None of them used this verification system of the Torah and the prophets to authenticate who he is, except, of course, Messiah himself and the gospel writers. Now, again, many other Messiahs do come, both before Yeshua and after, but they always come or try to validate their ministry or their actions based on the Jewish expectations of that day. And what were the Jewish expectations of that day? They're looking for a military leader who will also become king. That's their expectation. And so every Messiah does that. This is really, really important for us because it's going to set the story. It's going to set the tone for us to understand, number one, why Messiah over and over and over again, tells his disciples, don't tell anybody who I am. Don't say anything. Because once people start hearing the Mashiach is here, the expectation of everybody would be the king is here, the military leader is here. And when the people in Jerusalem hear that, and when the people of Rome hear that, they're going to think it's like every other Messiah who's come, and it's not going to work out good. So this is one of the reasons why Messiah sort of hides it for a long time, right up until just before the end, because even when he does reveal it, he still gets that treatment from the leadership and from Rome. But you're going to see that he comes in a very, very different expectation. But just to show you that this was the mindset of the day, and this creates sort of the political landscape in which first century Judea is living, and the tension that's there, because so many other revolts have happened with a quote unquote Messiah, that it's a dangerous, dangerous thing to call yourself Messiah or have other people call you Messiah because they have an expectation. So just as a sort of a side note here, not a side note, but a little side trip here to just verify this. This is the book of Acts, chapter 6, and verses 33 through 39. Now, this is after the disciples get arrested. They're out there, they're preaching Messiah. This is post-resurrection. After the resurrection, of course, they have boldness. They're out there preaching. They get arrested. And the people don't know what to do with them. In fact, they give testimony, and it just ticks off the Pharisees, ticks off the Sadducees. And verse 33 says, and those hearing the disciples speak, they were cut to the heart, and they wanted to kill him. They wanted to do to them exactly what they just did to Yeshua, just mere months before. But verse 34 says, but a certain one in the council stood up, a Pharisee named Gamaliel, very, very prominent, says here, a teacher of the Torah, but even today, a very, very respected historical figure within pre-Judaism, pre-rabbinical Judaism, Pharisaic Judaism, but still has a huge respect in the world of Judaism today. This is the teacher of Saul, Shaul. He's part of the council there, and he speaks up and he says, and he's respected by all the people, it says, and he ordered them to put the emissaries, that's the disciples, out for a little while. Get them out of the room. We got to talk here. Verse 35 says, and he said to them, men of Israel, take heed to yourselves what you intend to do to these men. For before these days, so he's going to give an example. He says, listen, we've gone this route before. We've seen other messiahs. We've seen people that follow these other messiahs. This is the advice he's given them. He says, for before these days, Toda rose up. Toda rose up around 6 AD. He led a revolt, proclaimed himself king, and got a military and got killed, and his disciples with him. He was claiming to be somebody, claiming to be a Messiah. This is 6 AD, way before Yeshua comes. Well, way before Yeshua, his ministry comes. Claiming to be somebody. It says, and a number of men, about 400, did join him. He was slain, and all who obeyed him were dispersed, and it came to nothing. Then, verse 37, he says, and after him, Yehuda of Galilee, another 6th century. This guy, Yehuda of Galilee, he's the one that starts the group called the Zealots, like Judas was a zealot, Simon the Zealot. These were sort of your Antifa types, your real rebels in the first century. These are people that wanted to fight. This started by this man, Yehuda of Galilee, another uprising. He says he rose up in the days of the census, and he drew away many people after him. He also perished, and all who obeyed him were scattered. Other messiahs have come, other disciples have come, those messiahs died, and the other disciples died. He says, and now I say to you, stay away from these men and leave them alone, because if this plan or this work is of men, it shall be overthrown, like every other one was. But if it's of Elohim, you are unable to overthrow it, lest you even be found to fight against Elohim. Great, great words of wisdom from Gamaliel, and what he says actually works out. It wasn't overthrown. They wound up killing him, and it still goes on even till today. And but this gives us a window into this concept or this idea of what people were looking for in a Messiah. This had come multiple times. Here's a couple of others, just to give you some reference here. We can probably name, go do your own work on 20, 30 other different people that tried to lead revolts against Rome, claimed to be a Messiah, a king Messiah, get an army and try to, go against Rome, and it failed miserably. Here's a couple that are written by Josephus in his book, The Jewish Antiquities and the Jewish War, two different parts of the book. You guys can read this if you get the Josephus's books, but here's just a couple of people that he names that were false messiahs. It was a man named Simon of Perea. This is about the 4th century BCE. And it says Simon had been a slave of Herod the Great. And after Herod died, Simon gathered followers. He put a royal diadem on his head and he had himself proclaimed king, Messiah. He and his followers burned the royal palace at Jericho and other royal properties. The Roman forces under Gratus eventually defeated Simon. Simon was captured and beheaded. And of course, this is described by Josephus in the book of Jewish Antiquities and in the book of the Jewish War. You guys can look this up for yourself and read it. He's not the only one. Again, in 4 BCE, Anthrages. Anthraces was a shepherd who, according to Josephus, was physically imposing, really, really big guy, like King Saul, and ambitious. He put on a diadem, a crown, and he declared himself king, Messiah, while his 4 brothers commanded armed groups, an army, a revolt. His movement fought both the Herodians and the Roman forces. Eventually, his brothers were defeated or captured by Anthrages, and Anthrages' movement collapsed. Of course, they were all killed. And again, Josephus discusses him both in the book of Antiquities and the books of the Wars of the Jews. And just a last one, a person named Judas, son of Hezekiah, also in the 4th century BCE, who attacked the royal arsenal at Sepphoris and gathered a substantial following after Herod's death. And of course, again, this is from Josephus, the book of the Antiquities and the book of the Wars of the Jews. So lots of messiahs came before Yeshua was born and after, all the way up to the time of 135, the revolt in 135 under Hillel, who anoints a Messiah to come and to lead a revolt against Jerusalem, and they do for a while, but again Rome comes in, and that becomes the final destruction of Jerusalem and the Jews at that point. So there's been messiahs that came after Yeshua, and there were messiahs who came before. But I want you to look at what the commonality is in all of them, whether it was under Hillel in 135 or here in 4 BCE or 6 BCE, they all came as a conquering military person who also proclaimed themselves king, because that was the general idea and belief of a Messiah. And so if you're the Roman government and you now know this prophecy, so to speak, of a coming Messiah, every time a revolt comes up and they're trying to claim this, you got to put it down, and people are going to die. Your soldiers are going to die. There's going to be a revolt. There's going to be unrest. It's not a good thing. So Rome is always on the lookout for these rebellions, and there's a lot of them, as well as the Jewish leadership is on the lookout, because that upsets the apple cart for them too. They got a business going on. They're running a country. They're running the temple. They don't want that disturbed. So both the people, the leaders, both Pharisaic and Sadduceic within Jerusalem and the Roman government, their eyes are, they're looking out. They're really, really concerned about this prophecy and these people coming up, of which obviously all of them wind up dying at the end. So we find out that the difference between everything they did and what Messiah did is he never claims to be king, at least not all the way until the end, and he doesn't claim to even be Messiah, not until the end of the story, after the 3 years. That's when he claims it. And even when he does not claim to be the military leader to lead a revolt. In fact, he does the exact opposite. He comes in peace, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But I want you to see the contrast here. Every prophet. So what does his verification come as? Not as a military leader. That's not how you verify him. Not as king. That's not how you verify him. You verify him by the Torah. You verify him by the prophets. You verify him by the stories, by the scripture. That's his verification, not kingship or revolt. So it makes him unique. And so as we go through Matthew, we're going to see him make more commentary and throw scripture at us to solidify this point, to highlight this point. This is why he is Messiah. Not because he's going to lead a revolt, but because the scripture says this, and the scripture says that, and the scripture says that, and this happened to fulfill that. So I want you to be sensitive to that. A Jewish audience would be very sensitive to that. That these explanations are being given outside of what their normal thinking would have been. So let's get into the context for today. Matthew chapter 2, verses 12 through 15. Now we're going to try to go through the entire chapter. We're going to take it in sections here. So the first section is, it says, we're picking up right from last week. So we've got the whole Bethlehem star thing happen, that we talked about what it could be and what the Gentiles saw versus what the Jews saw. A really interesting point. The Gentiles were looking for some minutia, something in the heavens that the Jews totally missed. They had no idea it was there. They weren't looking for it, and it meant nothing to them. What meant to them is what the scripture says, where he would be born. But the Jews totally missed the sign. In fact, the Jews get a different sign than the Gentiles do. The Gentile sign was evidently the star in the sky. Whatever that was, whether it be Jupiter in the constellation of Aries, it meant something to them. Now, does that verify them? Or does it mean that Elohim had his son's birth at a time when they would be looking? I don't know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You guys can argue about that on your own. But it happened, and it was verified. The Jews' sign, when you go to the Gospel of Luke, the sign given to Israel, the sign given to the Jews is you will find a babe in a manger. That's their sign. And of course, the heavens open up, the Shekinah glory comes, the angels come, and they speak to the shepherds. All right, but another story for another day. Let's move on in Matthew chapter 2. Verse 12 says, "And having been warned in a dream that they would not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way." So that, the Magi, they had to know who Herod was. He's not a nice guy. They had to know that Herod wasn't going to come and worship the child. Remember, worship doesn't mean they're going to worship him as God, as a king is how they're going to worship him. And of course, it tells us that they're warned in a dream. Now, is that they have a dream or that they were already thinking about it? It was on their mind. They realized, and we're not going to go back to Herod. Either way, they go back to their own country. It doesn't tell us what country it is. It's just east of them. It could be anything. It could be Jordan. It could be all the way from Iraq to Iran. It could be any of them. But this is the Roman world, of the Greco-Roman world of astrology, not the Babylonian world of astrology. Check out last week's message to get some more info on that. Anyway, verse 13 says, "And when they had left, see, a messenger of Yah." Now, I want to just bring up a point here that I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. In most of our versions, it says, and I can underline this here, it says, "a messenger of Yah." Now, thankfully, we have the Hebrew Matthew, authenticated all the way back from the Spanish, the Sepharad, all the way back to that which came from India. So we have a Hebrew Matthew. And in the Hebrew Matthew that's been translated, the Hebrew Matthew says, and it's right down here underneath, it says, and after their return, the messenger of Yah. Now you say, well, it says the same thing. It almost says the same thing. At least the way it's interpreted. And if it's interpreted correctly or not, I don't know. I'm not a linguist. I don't speak Hebrew, little pieces, but fluently. No, nor Greek. It's all Greek to me. But this makes a difference. If it is a messenger of Yah, or it is the messenger of Yah. That little article, the, makes a big difference. Because if it's a messenger of Yah, as most of our texts say, most of the texts that we have say, if it's a messenger, excuse me, a messenger of Yah, well, then it could be any angel, right? Be Gabriel, Michael, whomever, whatever name you want to give to it, even though I think some of them have specific things they do, but it could be any angel, right? Means anybody. But if it's the messenger of Yah, this opens up a real can of worms to what most of us have learned in Bible college and in seminary. And it's just sort of been the whole, belief of Christendom for a long time, that the messenger of Yah is Mashiach beforehand. Now, if that's true, okay, that's great. Then he's present there. But if it's the messenger of Yah, meaning the same angel that we see of in the Exodus story, the problem is the one who is the messenger of Yah is right here in Miriam's arms. And it cannot be the same one who is speaking to Joseph. Now, I'm not telling you it is. I'm not telling you it isn't. I'm just bringing it out for you to think about and to ponder on your own. Is it a messenger of Yah, any angel, or is it the messenger of Yah, which then makes it a physical manifestation of Father in the angel of Yah, which changes everything that we understand about the burning bush and all the rest of that stuff. But so again, I don't have an answer for you. I'm just bringing up the question. You guys can think about that. We're just going to take it as a messenger of Yah for now. So, and when they had left, see, a messenger of Yah appeared to Joseph in a dream. Kudos to Joseph. I mean, this isn't like the first time he's had a dream and he's following it. Here he goes again, another dream, and he's going to follow it. And in the dream, the angel speaks to him. It must have been a crazy dream. Arise and take the child and his mother and flee to Mitzrayim, Egypt, and remain there until I bring you word. So evidently we may not get the story, but this angel's going to speak to him again. Until I bring you word, for Herod is about to seek the child to destroy him. And rising up, he took the child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod, to fulfill. So here it is. Here's commentary. This is the commentary we were just speaking about. This is the identification. This is the explanation of why he is indeed the Mashiach. Not because he's a conquering king, not because he's got an army. This is saying this happened to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. He's talking about the prophet Hosea, and not just Hosea. Moses is he's going to reference, this was a reference to Moses, and we're going to see this also in Revelation. But he says to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet, out of Egypt I have called my son. So here is Matthew taking a prophet, a Tanakh verse about Elohim taking his son out of Egypt and telling us that this story happening right here in front of us of Joseph taking his family and taking them out of Judah, bringing them to Egypt, is a messianic fulfillment of Hosea 11:1. This is Matthew's commentary. If you're a Jew, your eyes perk up here because you're learning. Wait a second. So this story's been told before. This is Messiah fulfilling the law and the prophets. He's doing what had been said. Everything that's been said, he's going to do. Now, has everything been fulfilled yet? No, not yet. There's still a lot of stuff to happen. There's still the second coming, but he's fulfilled much of it. So let's take a look at this because it's important. If he's quoting Hosea 11:1 as a Hebrew thinking of the first century and today, we need to understand what Hosea 11 is talking about. I guess I want, even before we get to Hosea, let me show you this because it says Herod wanted to kill the kid, so that's why they're going to go to Egypt. That's why he's quoting Hosea. I want to give you just a little bit of a background on just how evil Herod was. So it's not by accident he says you need to get your wife and the child out of here. Herod's going to kill the kid. This was very, very serious, obviously serious enough to pack up your family and go. Here's just a very, very short list of some of the evil things that Herod had done. And he's done a lot more than, I mean, there'd be like, 2 or 3 pages of all the people he killed, all the people he had murdered. He murdered Antigonus II, Mattathias. He was the last Hasmonean king before him. He executed him in 37 BCE, and after that, Herod took Jerusalem. So he kills the last Hasmonean king, who shouldn't have been a king anyway. It was an illegitimate king. It's an illegitimate priesthood. All of that's true. We're going to talk more about that later. But he killed them. He also killed 45 prominent supporters of that Hasmonean king. Josephus reports this, that Herod killed 45 leading men, against him and for the Hasmonean king after taking power. He also killed Hyrcanus II, who was the former high priest and Hasmonean ruler. So again, the priesthood is illegitimate. The people that are in there are not Zadok priests. They're Hasmoneans. They wind up, and at the time of Messiah, they're not even that. They're just political leaders who have bought their way in. He had him executed, the high priest, in 30 BCE, despite being elderly. Just killed him. He killed Aristobulus III. That's Herod's young brother-in-law and high priest. So he became high priest. And he had him killed. Josephus says Herod arranged for him to be drowned in a swimming pool around 35 BC. Anybody who was a threat to Herod's political, kingly power died horrifically. He killed Mariamne I. This was Herod's Hasmonean wife, whom he apparently loved intensely, but also suspected her of treason, plotting against him. So he executed her around 29 BCE. He executed Alexandra, Miriam's mother. He executed her soon after. So Alexander and Aristobulus, Herod's own sons by Mariamne, he strangled in 7. So he's killing his own sons because he thinks that they want his throne in 7 BCE, after Herod accused them of conspiracy. He killed Antipater, another of Herod's sons, and his once designated heir. He killed him because he thought he was plotting against his father. So he kills 3 of his kids. He kills his wife. He kills kings. He kills high priests. These are just some of the prominent ones. The list goes on and on and on and on. He kills all of these people. And he killed his son, who was going to be heir only days, it says, according to Josephus, before he died in 4 BCE. According to a quote made by Augustus Caesar with regards to Herod and how evil Herod was, his quote is, "It is better to be one of Herod's pigs than his sons," meaning he's going to treat his pigs a lot better than he treated his son. So again, don't think that Herod is Jewish. He's not. Neither is his son, or anybody else who rules. So obviously he has another younger son that will become king after Herod dies. But he's probably about 10 years old at the time of Herod's death. But that quote by Augustus Caesar, "It's better to be one of Herod's pigs than one of his sons," tells you a lot about Herod and how evil he was. So when the angel says to Joseph, "Listen, it's time to go because Herod wants to kill him," he already sent the Magi there and said, "Come back and tell me where this child is who would be king, and so I can come and worship him." Well, I'm sure everybody knew what the stories of Herod was. There's no way that they think he's coming back to worship the kid. And obviously he's not. He's coming back to kill him. Thus, what Matthew says, "Thus is fulfilled, I called my son out of Egypt." Now he's quoting again Hosea chapter 11 and verse 1. But we need to read it in the context because Matthew's telling us this is an identifying verse or story or part of a story that gives authentication to who the Messiah truly is. So when you go back to Hosea 11:1, this is the story about the northern house. Israel is going to be scattered, who's going to be go back into, and going to be captured by the Assyrian people and be scattered all over the place. But what he starts off in chapter 11, verse 1, it says, when Israel was a child, meaning when Israel was first starting off, I loved him and out of Egypt I called my son. This is a reference back to the days of Moses. That's what he's talking about. I called my son. So he's calling, so the son that actually Hosea is talking about, when you read it in its literal sense, in the Peshat sense, it's talking about Israel, very similar to the servant of the book of Isaiah. It's the servant is Israel, but there comes a point in the story of the servant of in Isaiah where it goes from being Israel, that goes to being something much, much bigger, the Messiah. This is a similar thing. So Matthew's telling us that there's something in the story that's actually about Messiah, my son. Context is they called to them, so they went from their face. They slaughtered to the Baals, and they turned their incense to carved images. And I taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by their arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I drew them with ropes of a man and cords of love. I was to them as those who take the yoke from their neck. I bent down and I fed them, and he pulled them out of Egypt. But now, as you finish reading Hosea 11, they're going to go back to Assyria, and Assyria is going to be a type of Egypt. They're going to go back to a land of slavery. So this is the context. The context is out of Egypt, that they were doing some wrong things, and Elohim took them out from the hands of an evil king to bring them into the land. So he's equating the story of what the nation of Israel went through, and he's telling us the comparison of the nation of Israel. We're going to see this in some other quotes, and as the rest of the story of Matthew goes on, he is going to equate Israel, the story of literal Israel, both tribes, both houses. He's going to equate it with the story of Messiah. And he's going to tell us the story of Messiah in the pattern of Israel. And if you're Jewish, you'd catch right on to that. Here's Exodus chapter 4, verse 22. This is where it comes from. This is coming out of Egypt. He says, and you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says Yah, Israel is my son. So there's no confusion here. We're talking about Israel. The nation is my son, my firstborn. And so I say to you, let my son go serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, see, I am killing your son, your firstborn. The whole story of the Passover. So again, the my son that is Israel, the my son that is Israel. Matthew is telling us this is a reference to Messiah. He's giving us some commentary here. Here is John chapter 1, verse 11. So not only is Messiah called the son, is he called, so you can think of Messiah as Israel, and he's going to walk the entire path that Israel has walked, except he's going to walk it correctly, where Israel failed over and over and over again. John chapter 1, verse 11 says the Messiah, he came to his own did not receive him, but as many as received him, to them he gave authority to become sons of Elohim. All of us as well have the authority to become sons of Elohim. He called his son Israel, the nation, out of Egypt. He called his son, the divine literal son, Messiah, out of Egypt, and he's called all of us as those who believe on him also, not out of Egypt, but out of slavery to sin. And this becomes the pattern that we follow. Revelation chapter 21, verse 7, is the end fulfillment of all of this, talking about the one who overcomes, meaning all the people who overcome in faith in Messiah and in obedience to Elohim. The one who overcomes shall inherit all this, everything that Father has, because everything Father has he has been given to his firstborn son, the Messiah. He says, and I shall be his Elohim, and he, all of us, shall be Elohim's son. So you see this definition of my son getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, starting off with Israel. It is Israel. Israel is called out. Messiah is the Israel of Elohim, who is the firstborn. And in Messiah, we are all sons of Elohim, and the inheritance will go to all of us, and we will all be called the sons of Elohim. That's just a progression all the way through the book. So the story of Israel down here, the story of ancient Israel, we're going to find that Matthew's going to use the story of ancient Israel, and it's going to use it in a very Hebraic Jewish way to teach us the story of Messiah. And they would have absolutely been sensitive to this in the first, a Jew reading it today, if they really honestly took the time to read it, you can't miss it. It's there. It's there. Okay, so back to the story. So, I mean, obviously the Magi are not stupid, right? So they get warned in a dream, but I'm pretty sure they knew who Herod was. So here's chapter 2, verses 16 through 18. It says, Then Herod, having seen that he was fooled by the Magi, was greatly enraged. Yeah, well, if he kills his own sons for just thinking that they're going to, come against him, he must have been pretty ticked off. So he sent forth and he slew all the male children in Bethlehem and in all its borders from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had exactly learnt from the Magi. So evidently, maybe he's given himself 6 months leeway on either side. So you were talking about the Messiah being like a year, maybe a year and a half old by the time the Magi get there. Again, it's not the traditional quote unquote Christmas story that we always see. Magi don't seem to come until much later. So Herod winds up killing all the children in Bethlehem. And again, we're going to get a commentary from Matthew here. It's important. He says, Then was filled what was spoken by Jeremiah, the prophet, saying, A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and weeping and great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they were no more. So what does this have? Why would he comment that? What does this mean to the Hebrew mind of the first century? Well, they're talking about the Babylonian exile. This is what Jeremiah is referring to in Jeremiah chapter 31. That Babylon is going to take all the children out of Judah, out of that area, march them out of Jerusalem past Bethlehem, and they're going to go off into captivity. And as they do that, as they come out of Jerusalem, they got to pass by Bethlehem. They got to go in. They got to go into the area of Ramah. Bethlehem was the place where Rachel is entombed, where her tomb stands. So in 586, which is way after Rachel's death, she's there buried. All of her children, her descendants, are coming out of Judah, and they're being marched off into slavery, just like into Egypt. They're being marched off into slavery into Babylon. This is the context of Jeremiah 31. So if you're Jewish and Matthew is referring to this, you're talking about the Babylonian exile. Just so Messiah is going out to be exiled, Israel went out to be exiled, and now he's going down to Egypt, and then we're comparing it to Israel going to Egypt, and now we're comparing it to Judah going into Babylon. He is referencing both houses here. Here's Jeremiah chapter 31:15 for context. It says, and thus said Yah, a voice was heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted for her children. So, I mean, does this literally happen? No, this is the prophet explaining how, the heart of Rachel would have been weeping, seeing all her children going off into slavery, that they are no more, that there is no more Judah. Because they are no more, the house would be destroyed. Thus says Yah. So even though that's happening and Rachel's weeping, and so this is the key that he's telling us, this is the connection. So even though Messiah is going into Egypt, here's what he's telling us, because this is what Yah says in that context. Don't forget, in that day when you quote one scripture, that the idea was that, he couldn't, Matthew couldn't say in Jeremiah 31:15 or 15 to whatever, read this. People didn't, so he quoted the main part of the verse, and the idea is you were supposed to look it up or understand what the context was. They didn't have, verses and chapters like we do. So we can pinpoint it exactly. They just had to give a verse and you had to understand what was being said. And they would have. They hear this every day, every year in synagogue as they go through all their Torah portions. So here's the context, though. So they're going off into slavery. Rachel is crying, weeping, spiritually, I guess, as her children are being marched out. But look at what Yah says. Thus says Yah, hold back your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for there is a reward for your work, declares Yah. And they shall return from the land of the enemy. That's the context. Messiah's going down to Egypt, just like Elohim called them out of Egypt, just like Judah went into Babylon. Don't fret over it. Don't fret over it, Rachel. Don't cry, because he will return from the land of the enemy. And there is expectancy from your latter end, declares Yah, and your children shall return to their own country. So he's letting them know this going down to Egypt's temporary. Just like the story of the whole house of Israel, of in fact the northern house in Hosea, and the whole house of Israel in Egypt and in Exodus, and now in Jeremiah, the house of Judah. He is identifying Messiah with all of these, using all of these as the analogy that he's going down, but he's not staying down. He's coming back. And again, so like I said, that's where Rachel was entombed, outside of Bethlehem. So interesting stuff. So that's why he's giving those particular quotes. So his commentary is added very, very intelligently. You know, it means something if we take the time to really look at it and understand it. So verses 19 through 22, hopefully we'll get through all of this. Got a few minutes left. So he's going to be called a Nazarene. So let's just read the narrative. It says, "And Herod, having died, see, a messenger of Yah appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt." So just like he said, again, is it the messenger of Yah or a messenger? I don't know. Anyway, it appears to him in a dream and says, "Joseph, arise and take the child and his mother, go into the land of Israel, for those seeking the life of the child are dead," meaning Herod's dead. Right? He's the one that died. He just killed his son, and now his youngest son is going to take over. His youngest son is named Archelaus, Herod Archelaus. "And rising up, he took the child and his mother and came into the land of Israel." But here it is. I put it in blue and green here. "But hearing that Archelaus was reigning over Judah instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and having been warned in a dream, he departed to the parts of Galilee." So we understand some context here. Herod was bad, no doubt. Evil, evil, evil guy. Maybe better than his son Archelaus, but his son Archelaus was no Boy Scout. He killed lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people. There was a Passover that Josephus tells us about, where Archelaus kills over 3,000 people during the Passover. So certainly an evil guy. But why do they wind up, instead of going to Judea, why do they wind up going to the Galilee? Because that's what it tells us. They're afraid to go there. So instead of going back to Judea, which is their homeland, Judea is where all the people who came from the tribe of Judah went to. When the census was called, they went back home to Judah. In Judah were all the descendants of David, which would have been people that had a rightful, those who were of the lineage of Judah, had a right to claim kingship. If there was ever a kingship in Israel again, they would have a right to do it. Well, his father was just about to kill the son, their son, because he heard from the Magi that he was born there. What do you think his next son is going to do? So not just Miriam and Joseph, lots of other people from the tribe of Judah left Judea and they went to Galilee. Here's why. If you can see the picture right next to this, let me get a different color here, something dark. This area here was the area that Herod the Great, a guy who had his whole family killed, wife, kids, all the rest of that. This is the area that Herod ruled. He ruled the area of Galilee, of the Decapolis, of Perea, of Judea, of Samaria, of Idumea. He had a large area that he ruled over, obviously with a very hard hand to the people. He dies. Rome does not allow the son who comes in to govern the same amount of area that his father covered. So they cut down the area that Archelaus rules over to just Samaria, Judea, and Idumea, meaning Perea, Decapolis, and Galilee are no longer part of his kingdom or under his rule. So the reason they don't stay in Judea is they would have been under the rule of Archelaus, who's just as nuts as his dad. So they move up to Galilee out of his hands to make sure nothing happens. So if his son goes bonkers and thinks about the things his father did, I'm going to kill anybody who could be a descendant of David. They're living up in the Galilee. So just so you get some context here. So they go up there, but again, nothing happens by accident. Here it is. Listen to what he says. He says, but hearing that Archelaus was reigning over Judah instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And having been warned in a dream, he departed to the parts of Galilee, right along the sea here, or really up here outside of the reign of his former father in Nazareth. And he came and dwelt in the city of Nazareth in the province of Galilee, right by the sea. It's really not a sea, it's a lake. It says, thus to fulfill what was spoken by, now here it is, he says, the prophets, plural. He shall be called a Nazarene. Now, what Matthew does here, he's actually sort of paraphrasing here, because there is no one singular prophet in all of the Torah or the Tanakh that ever refers to the Mashiach being a Nazarene. This becomes a Hebrew play on words that he's doing here. But it's a really, really important one. It's a big one. And this is something, again, in Hebrew literature, the people of the first century would have understood this. They would have gotten this. They would have caught this. Especially in Hebrew, you would have caught it. Maybe not in Greek, maybe not in English, we don't catch it. But in Hebrew, you would have caught this. Now, he's called a Nazarene, not a Nazarite. There's two different things. A Nazarite, according to number 6, is a particular oath that an individual makes. You don't have to come from Nazareth to make a Nazarite vow. It's a vow and things you have to do, another message for another day. But so Messiah is not a Nazarite, but he is a Nazarene. He lives in the area of Nazareth. That word Nazarene comes from the root word netzar, meaning branch or shoot. Remember, right in the beginning, the lineage, he is the son of Abraham, the son of David. David, 14, 14, 14. Beloved, beloved, beloved. Son of Joseph, who is the son of David, the rightful heir. This term, Nazarene, and when he says that the prophets, as prophets plural, say he shall be called a Nazarene, he's referring to, again, the lineage of David making him king. He's going to keep going back to this theme over again. If you're Jewish, this makes sense to you. You understand this. This comes right out. So let's explain this. Let's see exactly what he's saying. Now, again, there's no one prophet that says that, but there are multiple prophets, and I'm only going to give you 2 here. You guys can do your own research and look up the other. I think there's another 3 mentions of this, but here's 2, meaning prophets, plural, that speak of Messiah as a Nazarene. But what they're really referring to is the lineage of David, making him the rightful heir to the throne. So to inherit the throne, he's got to leave Judea and he's got to go to Nazareth. Why? Here it is, Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 1. This is one prophet he's referring to. It says, and a rod, that word rod is 24:15, chater, it means a root, shall come forth from the stump of Jesse, and a sprout, that word sprout or branch is 5342 in your Strong's Concordance. It's the word netzar, where the word netzarim or Nazarene comes from. The sprout from his roots shall be faithful. Verse 10 of that same chapter, you can read the whole thing. It's just don't have time to go through it all, but the whole thing is important. But from verse 10, it says, and in that day, there shall be a root of Jesse out of Bethlehem. Jesse was in Bethlehem. Jesse's who Samuel goes to anoint King David in Bethlehem. Goes through all of his sons. None of his sons meet the stature. His young shepherd boy comes in, who's Rudy, it says, and he gets anointed as king. This will become important when we get to John the Baptist. But where does this happen? In Bethlehem. So the son of Jesse in Bethlehem is King David. But this is talking about a root from David that will become fruitful. Here it says a root from Jesse standing as a banner, standing as the emblem, the symbol of the people. What people? The symbol of Judah and Ephraim, which we just read in Hosea 11:1, that I called my child out of Egypt. meaning both houses in Egypt, but in Hosea, meaning the northern house who's going to Assyria, and also no weeping in Ramah, how we call this people out of who are going into Babylon. He stands as a banner for both houses. Messiah identifies with both houses. He is Israel. He represents Israel and Ephraim. It says, and unto him, the nations, all the peoples, all the Gentiles shall seek, and his shalom, his rest shall be glorious. Obviously, this is a reference to the Messiah. So he's called a Netzer. Here is Jeremiah chapter 33, another prophet, second prophet. Jeremiah says, see, the days are coming, declares Yah, when I shall establish the good word which I have promised to the house of Israel. Here it is, the house of Israel, the whole house taken out of Egypt, the northern house taken out of, his son sent into Assyria, and to the house of Judah sent into Babylon. The two verses he just used prior to this prior to this verse that Matthew just quoted. I have promised to the house of Israel and the house of Judah. So what did Elohim promise through Jeremiah to the house of Israel and the house of Judah? He promised a new covenant. In Jeremiah 31:31. That's the promise. So he's telling us, I will establish the good word which I promised to the house of Israel and the house of Judah, the new covenant. Here's the promise. Here's the new covenant. In those days and at that time, I cause a branch, a netzar of righteousness to spring forth from David. David is from Jesse. Jesse's in Bethlehem. David's in Bethlehem. And this branch, he shall do right ruling and righteousness, meaning this branch to come shall do the Torah. Where? In the earth. In the earth. I did not come to get rid of the Torah. I came to fulfill it. So really what this verse is telling us when he says the prophets said that he's a Nazarene, he's telling us from Jesse in Bethlehem, from Jesse, out of Bethlehem comes Messiah, like Jesse, a sprout from Jesse, from David to Messiah, who is the branch, who lives in Galilee, in an area called Nazareth, right by the sea. Connects it all together, just puts it all together. Again, if you're Hebrew, this just makes sense. It's just connecting all the dots. They're telling us Messiah connects with the house of connects with the whole house, connects with the northern house, connects with the southern house, is the promised branch from Isaiah 11, and the promised branch to both houses to fulfill the promise of the new covenant spoken of by Jeremiah. The King, the Messiah. That is what that second half of the chapter of the Gospel of Matthew is all about. And we will leave it right there for tonight. I think that's enough stuff to make you think about for the next day or so. Go back over the notes, check it out, put it all back together. There's other verses you can read too about the branches. Didn't have time to go over them. You've only got a short window on Wednesday nights to do it. Hopefully this made sense to you. If not, go back over it nice and slow, listen to it again. Pray Abba, open your eyes and your ears. There's great, great stuff there. Nothing's by accident. Everything's detailed. This is to authenticate to us that he is indeed the son of David, the son of Elohim, Solomon, the Mashiach. Not the way Israel thought, though. Not the way they thought. All right, guys, we'll leave it right there for tonight. I hope that you guys enjoyed that it was a blessing to you. Don't forget to join us tomorrow morning for our morning manners, and of course on Shabbat for our service at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We look forward to seeing you guys. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you again. Yah bless. Shalom.